What happens when a less advanced civilization encounters a more advanced one? What would happen today if we were visited by one? And how would we view them and their technology? Would we view it as magic? And would we view them as gods? I guess that depends on how far advanced the visitors appear to be for us to view them as magical. But what if I told you that it's very possible that this has happened before in very recent history? That our ancestors possibly were visited by people not from Earth, which led us to classifying them as gods, angels, and even demons.
We've taken this one step further. And we're saying it's not just our religion that's a cargo cult. It's not just the pyramids in Egypt or the Nazca lines or something. We're saying our entire civilization is a cargo cult. Our science is a cargo cult.
So today, we're going to be taking a look into the world of cargo cults, a phenomenon that emerged in the South Pacific, and the possibility that majority of the world's religions may be one giant cargo cult. So, thanks for joining me again today, guys. Hope you had a good New Year's, and let's get started. So I'll begin by explaining what a cargo cult is. It's an interesting concept that emerges when a less advanced civilization or people come in contact with a more highly advanced civilization. And due to the drastic difference in culture and technology, the less advanced people tend to view and worship them as gods or magical beings, spirits. A great example of cargo cults documented are the religious movements that originated among indigenous Melanesian populations in the South Pacific, including the one that worshiped the United States military, who emerged during World War II when American troops were stationed in the Pacific region. The mass arrival of American troops in the Pacific began in 1942, bringing with them a large amount of supplies or cargo, which included items that reflected material wealth and industrialization beyond anything the islanders had ever experienced.
During the Second World War, American soldiers were sent to certain isolated islands in the South Pacific to build airfields and military installations. When the war was over, they went home.
And a very curious thing happened. The natives of these islands, isolated from the outside world, lived virtually in the Stone Age, until the Americans came and went. Very soon afterwards, the natives began making straw and bamboo fetishes resembling airplanes, crude landing surfaces on their islands to tempt the visitors back.
The strangers had brought fabulous treasure with them from the skies. Tools, fantastic weapons, sky machines they'd never dreamed of.
And so with the islanders having no concept of what the hell is going on, believed these people were gods and that these goods were divinely created. After the war, the American military just left. The cargo disappeared, which led to the development of these cargo cults. These cults performed elaborate rituals with the hope of attracting the return of the Americans in their cargo. The John Frum movement, one of the most well-known cargo cults, gained popularity in the early 1940s, when 50,000 American troops were stationed in New Hebrides, now known as Vanuatu. In these cargo cults, the United States wasn't just a powerful country, it was mythologized. The American soldiers, with their advanced technology and abundant supplies, who were seen as emissaries from a world beyond, and even as gods. These movements often involve building symbolic infrastructure like airstrips in hopes of attracting more cargo from supernatural sources. They didn't understand what they were seeing. They made not only airstrips, but constructed what they saw out of wood like planes, watchtowers, and even the weapons held by the United States soldiers. Even the formation these soldiers were taking during their drills and marches, it was all mythologized and made sacred by these indigenous people. Some of these groups are even led by charismatic leaders, very similar to what we would call priests, promising new age of blessings, telling tales of the sky gods, returning with food wrapped in silver, and everlasting life.
Now, cargo cults is a common kind of a meme, you might say. People are familiar with the idea. People in a very primitive location, a Stone Age people, suddenly see airplanes landing on a landing strip, and they're bringing food and medicine and uniforms and technology, and these Stone Age people are watching this take place. They don't know what this is. They have no context for it in their society, their religion, their culture, nothing. Just the mere experience of this changes them. So they go and they build airline landing strips, right? They build conning towers, they build all kinds of stuff. They take coconuts and build headsets from it. They're trying to duplicate what they saw in the expectation that a plane will land on their landing strip and give them all this good stuff.
Right.
Okay, so that's the cargo cult concept. We've taken this one step further, and we're saying it's not just our religion that's a cargo cult. It's not just the pyramids in Egypt or the Nazca lines or something. We're saying our entire civilization is a cargo cult. Our science is a cargo cult because we're trying to get off planet. We're trying to go to the stars. We're trying to go to space. Why? When for hundreds of thousands of years we wandered around the savannas of this planet, we were perfectly okay as Homo sapiens, doing nothing much except hanging out and chilling.
Right.
And then suddenly something happens and we all get crazy all around the globe at the same time, and we're now trying to get to the stars.
Now, this all really makes sense to me. To anyone visiting from the past, even as recent as 150 years ago, a lot of our technology would seem like magic to them. So who's to say that this had not happened before? Let me introduce you to the ancient astronaut theory, also known as the ancient alien theory, suggests that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in antiquity or prehistoric times and made contact with humans, suggesting that this contact influenced the development of modern cultures, technologies, religions, and even human biology. Certain technological feats of ancient civilizations that seem too advanced for their time. An obvious one would be the construction of the Egyptian pyramids. The accuracy of its construction, the level of precision seen in the cutting and fitting of these stones suggests that the Egyptians might have used advanced tools, which are not typically associated with that era. Its natural astrological alignment with the belt of Orion, the actual weight of the stones, some of which were from the king's chamber, being pulled from a known quarry that is close to 500 miles away. That's ridiculous. That's like saying they pulled these massive stones from a distance similar from New York City to North Carolina. It's insane to say they managed to quarry and pull these stones and finish these pyramids in just 20 years. And whenever we try to replicate it, our machinery can't move stones this heavy. Not without a lot of money being put into it, which is already enough to show that something is off about the construction of the pyramids.
Do you know if you cut and place 10 stones a day, it would take you 664 years to make the pyramid? There's 2,300,000 stones in the Great Pyramid. It's very likely that the entire world experienced a cataclysmic disaster around 11,800, 12,000 years ago, somewhere in that range. and it knocked us back into the Stone Age.
Dude,
but
yeah.
those people who were around before that
Yeah.
were probably more sophisticated than we are. We
Yeah.
just have a hard time imagining that because
Yeah.
we don't have any evidence of it.
And we just don't think that the execution matches up with the technology. If we
Well,
found some tech
Yeah.
that would make sense, I think that we could go, okay, maybe this did happen 4,000 years ago, or whatever it is. But so far, the idea of like a chisel and a stone carving all these blocks and then people just dragging them in the sand, I think it seems a little bit
There's some real problems
unreasonable.
with that.
Yeah.
There's some real problems with the actual physical limitations of the size of these obelisks,
Yeah.
where they're cutting them in the mountains and they have to move them hundreds of miles. How are you getting them out of the mountains? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is like 2,000 tons. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you saying?
Yeah. You said it, I think I was listening to the pod with you guys, and you were like, if I was Elon Musk, I'd just build one. And I get that to a certain extent.
I don't know if you could.
The fact that we have to resort to such high level of machinery just to even begin to lift these stones. And I honestly get disappointed when people who don't know this fact still see nothing weird with the official statement saying that it was possibly built in 20 years. Come on, y'all are kidding yourselves. I mean, the damn pyramids are earthquake proof. Cairo's right there and would get severely damaged by an earthquake. Our modern buildings all across the world be getting leveled in earthquakes, while structures like the pyramids can still stand? And we shouldn't consider that advance? Especially since they claim the gods came down and some even gave man writing and knowledge. Man, this is a cargo cult. Various ancient cultures and religions have myths and traditions that speak of gods, divine beings, or other entities originating from the heavens or realms outside of Earth. In many cases, you can technically view these gods and beings as extraterrestrial visitors. I'ma just be honest. Very rarely is it the other way around. Very rarely it's Earth and the cosmos was already here, and then the god was born. No, the god is usually responsible for creation itself. Therefore, it can be seen as not being from Earth, descending from the heavens and bringing knowledge to mankind like the watcher angels from the biblical text. The many Native American cultures that have stories of star beings or sky people who descended to Earth and interacted with their ancestors, bringing them knowledge and spiritual teachings, cargo cult. The Dreamtime stories of the Australian Aborigines that speak of ancestral beings who roam the earth, creating life and shaping the landscape. These beings often originate from the sky or stars. And even some of these Australian tribes had ancient cave paintings of beings that look very similar to our modern day interpretation of gray aliens. Cargo cult. Vimanas, as elaborately depicted in ancient Indian scriptures, dating back to the 2nd millennium BCE, are often visualized as flying chariots or celestial palaces. These archaic texts, including the renowned Rig Veda and other later epics of Ramayana and Mahabharata, provide descriptions of the construction, operation, and capabilities of these vehicles. For instance, the Vimanaka Shastra, a text that surfaced in 1952 but is claimed to be based on much older Sanskrit writings, describes Vimanas as being powered by several gyroscopes. These gyroscopes are placed inside a sealed vortex of liquid mercury, suggesting that the rotation of Mercury could have driven some sort of advanced propulsion system. This concept even captured the imagination of various historical figures, including those in Nazi Germany. The Nazis were reportedly embarking on a project known as Die Glock, or the Bell, during World War II. This device, believed to be inspired by the descriptions of Vimanas, was apparently powered by a vortex of mercury. The aim was to harness its unique energy properties for advanced aircraft or even anti-gravity technology. What's even more intriguing is the contemporary research into Mercury's energy properties under specific conditions.
Yeah.
Experiments conducted in the early 21st century have begun to shed light on the potential of Mercury sustained in a vortex. This has led some to speculate about the existence of a forgotten, ancient knowledge, possibly shared with humanity by extraterrestrial visitors. And if that's the case, it points towards a global legacy of advanced technological concepts that could be hinting at interstellar connections in our distant past. These texts describe some of these vimanas as saucer-shaped, while others were cylinder-shaped, and were said to fly with the wind speed and produce a melodious sound. In terms of weaponry, the text described the vimanas as being equipped with powerful weapons. One text describes a vimana hurling a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe against 3 cities. A column of smoke and fire as brilliant as 10,000 suns rose in all its splendor, reducing the cities to ashes, made the water undrinkable, and it took years before people can safely breathe the air there. What does that even sound like to you? Like a nuke, right?
We have descriptions of some of these vehicles being involved in battles. They were able to fly incredibly fast. They had weapons on these machines with which to shoot down other vimanas.
Many of the Sanskrit texts on vimanas speak of using mercury as part of their propulsion. And this would be exactly what NASA is planning to use right now. An ion thruster type spacecraft, which is using solar energy to charge mercury particles that are discharged from the back of the craft, giving it thrust and propelling it into space. So it's really fascinating that engineers at NASA are on the same wavelength as these ancient Vedic texts, which were given to the ancient Hindus by the gods.
When we encounter these incredible craft, we have to be open to the possibility that these are some kind of extraterrestrial craft, or the builders or designers were of extraterrestrial origin.
Even Oppenheimer, the father of the nuclear bomb, quoted some of these Hindu texts. Maybe to confirm the similarities between these ancient weapons of mass destruction and the atom bomb. Imagine if this was all true. Then it's possible that most of our cultures were either based off of many different interactions with different advanced visitors, or maybe it was from one advanced group of beings that visited, that spread across the world, and based on the area they were in, a culture or a religion developed around them. So I'm not really sure on that part. But the similarities to the nuclear weapon, cargo code. The Dogon tribe from Mali, Africa, are known for their knowledge in astronomy, which they attribute to the Nomo, amphibious beings who are said to have come from the sky. They claim that their knowledge of the stars comes from contact with these extraterrestrial beings called Nomos, who visited Earth from the Sirius star system around 3200 BC. Now, this tribe is amazing, and honestly one of the main reasons for my beliefs that we were visited by ancient alien beings in the past, especially with what I discussed about in my simulation theory video, that the Dogon tribe and their Adinkra symbols could be an artistic representation of the fundamental basis of reality. And this was given to them from these Nomos, from these visitors from the Sirius star system. Just for a little refresher, this was introduced by physicist James Gay Jr. and his colleagues. The Adinkra codes are graphical tools used in super representation theory to help represent supersymmetrical algebras in one dimension, specifically in quantum mechanics. The connection between Adinkra symbols and Adinkra codes lies in the use of these symbols to visually represent complex mathematical equations that are present in physics, and is said to unconsciously represent the principles of supersymmetry in theoretical physics. This was so incredible that it even shocked James Gates and his entire team.
In the mathematical context of such equations, we have discovered that there are mathematical structures that are indistinguishable from error-correcting codes, as does occur in digital information transmission. I'd like to point out to people a couple of things with that that I find problematic with that. One is, if you accept that, then you have to also accept the existence of ghost.
Existence of?
Ghost.
I've been, for the last 15 years, trying to answer the kinds of questions that my colleagues here have been raising. And what I've come to understand is that there are these incredible pictures that contain all the information of a set of equations that are related to string theory. And it's even more bizarre than that, because when you then try to understand these pictures, you find out that buried in them are computer codes, just like the type that you find in a browser when you go surf the web. And so I'm left with the puzzle of trying to figure out whether I live in the Matrix or not.
Wait, you're blowing my mind at this moment. So are you saying your attempt to understand the fundamental operations of nature leads you to a set of equations that are indistinguishable from the equations that drive search engines and browsers on our computers?
That is correct. So
to think that these symbols that were used by the royalty, by spiritual leaders for funeral rites and other ceremonies, could be linked to the nature of reality or extraterrestrial beings visiting Earth. The Dogon tribe knew too much. They knew about the existence of Sirius B, a dim and dense companion star of Sirius A, which is invisible to the naked eye, way before it was discovered by the Western astronomers in 1862. They also knew that Sirius B had a 50-year elliptical orbit around Sirius A, and they celebrate this cycle with the Sikri Festival, which they believe renews the Earth. They knew about other astronomical facts, such as the 4 major moons of Jupiter, the rings of Saturn, and the planets orbiting the sun. These facts were only discovered by Westerners after Galileo invented the telescope, and all of this was said to be passed down to them by the Nomos for centuries, alien visitors that came to Earth. Now, how could they have this level of knowledge so far back in ancient times? In their words, they were taught this by a more advanced race and made their culture based off of their beliefs. Cargo code. And of course, I had to include the Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations. They had a pantheon of gods known as Anunnaki, gods that had descended from the heavens, from a place called Nibiru, and gave man life by mixing godly DNA with clay, and also gave us knowledge as well. The Sumerians is key because, as I discussed in my previous video on man being made by clay, it's very possible that all major religions stem from this one culture. And according to readings like Zechariah Sitchin's The Anunnaki Chronicles, 12th Planet, and many more, the Anunnaki supposedly had moments of being rulers of different parts of the world. For example, when Marduk and his brother Thoth went to war in Egypt, their father told Thoth to take his people and go across the seas to start up civilization over there, to avoid more infighting between his sons. So he did this and was known mainly as Quetzalcoatl in the Americas, which would help to explain the Olmec heads and the many pyramids on the western side of the world, the Nazca lines in Peru, and many other cultures that had his beliefs in Quetzalcoatl or alien visitors in general. All of these could be seen as cargo cults that have evolved from generations into what it is today. This is why Sumeria is important, because there are researchers who even believe that the Hindu, Greek, Norse, and even the Abrahamic God, Yahweh, are all different interpretations of the same group of advanced visitors on Earth that had kicked off civilizations across the Earth, technically making most of the world a product of a cargo cult. In many of these cultures, the celestial or extraterrestrial origin of these beings is often symbolic, representing their divine or otherworldly nature rather than literal extraterrestrial life. These stories form a key part of each culture's explanation of the origins of their knowledge, customs, and the world around them. And how else would you describe an airplane if you do not know what it is? If civilization were to end right now and you were trying to teach your grandchild what an airplane is, how would you describe it? You describe it as a giant bird or as a chariot flying through the sky, depending on the era you are in. A big supporter of ancient aliens and a huge influence in popularizing this modern theory was Erich von Däniken, mainly in his book called Chariots of the Gods. He states that in the Bible, the book of Ezekiel opens with a detailed vision of a flying chariot coming from the sky, described with wheels, fire, lightning, and resounding noise. Traditional interpretations of this passage could view it as symbolic or mystical experience reflecting the majesty and power of God, but von Däniken, him and his people interprets this vision as a potential encounter with an spacecraft, with an extraterrestrial spacecraft. That the detailed description of the chariot with its wheels within wheels, the noise and all the fire, could be a primitive man's attempt to try and describe a highly advanced piece of technology, specifically a spacecraft. He points to the specific elements described by Ezekiel: the wheels, the appearance of glowing metal, and the living creatures with 4 faces and wings as indicative of a machine rather than a divine apparition.
When examining the Old Testament account of Ezekiel, perhaps one of the most fascinating perspectives to consider comes from Erich von Däniken, author of Chariots of the Gods.
My God, in my opinion, in my dreams, does not need a vehicle in which to move around. God is omnipresent. God is like a spirit. He's always there. Now in the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel describes a strange story. He says that of a sudden they hear the noise in the sky. All the slaves look up there. Then he sees an object coming down from the sky. Then he realizes that the object makes a tremendous noise. He compares the noise with the thundering of a waterfall. Or he compares it with fighting wagons. So a terrible noise this object made. All the slaves looking there, the object comes down, sand is blown up. Ezekiel is high priest by profession, so he believes in the beginning it must be God. He felt on his nose to pray to the Lord. And then he realized this is not God. And then he describes exactly what he sees. The wings move. When the wings move, that the tremendous noise started to be there again. When the wings stood still, they were hanging down. He describes the leg. He clearly says the leg were out of metal. Then he cries the wheel. And the wheel shocked him totally, because the wheel of his times can go forward and backward. But the wheel which he sees here, they go also forward and backward, but at the same time, left and right, without making a steering movement. Ezekiel sees a wheel which goes forward, backward, right and left without making a steering movement. This shocks him so he cannot understand it. He describes it 4 times.
Either way, wouldn't God just be able to appear? It seems every time it seems a lot of the times in the Bible where God is being seen somewhere, he's coming down in a chariot, or he's being escorted by something he's sitting in, something like a spacecraft or something. This is what the theory is suggesting. For more further in-depth exploration, you can find Erich von Däniken's work along with other authors like Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote about the ancient Sumerian civilization and its potential connections to alien visitors. It's very interesting. The concept of awaiting blessings and the arrival of a messiah or your God could parallel the cargo cult's expectation of cargo from supernatural forces. We will all be saved once they come back, instead of fixing it ourselves. I believe it was a primitive attempt at understanding what was going on at the time. Like the inhabitants of these Melanesian islands, they saw our United States military members as gods. They regular people, even though we know that they are men like you and me. Come on. So maybe that's what happened in the past. Advanced extraterrestrial beings could have landed here, started a cult following around them, whether on purpose or by accident, we don't know. But at some point, they were seen and worshipped as gods, I could completely start to believe in something like this, honestly. I know that, in my personal opinion, I believe that an older version of humanity are who our gods are based off of today, not necessarily aliens. It could still be aliens, but I believe that humanity may have reached a certain technological level before. I mean, we've at least existed for 200,000 years. So you're telling me that it took us a few thousand years from the Ice Age, around 12,000 BCE, to come out the Ice Age, and then another 7,000 years for us to invent agriculture, farming, metallurgy, and then all the way to airplanes, satellites, and nuclear weapons, and landing on the moon? We did that in just 7,000 years, but we're 200,000 years old? Look, I know you guys know where I'm going with this. I believe that old humanity went through a natural disaster. Whether the Ice Age, a meteor, I'm not too sure. But in order to survive the climate change, I believe the powerful and wealthy of old humanity survived. Maybe with bunkers, I'm not sure, but we all know that's possible. I covered it in my last video right here. Go check it out. But I believe the powerful and wealthy of the old world survived the Ice Age, and then went to areas where hunter-gatherer tribes or survivors of this calamity could be. And then they offered their knowledge of building and farming in exchange for them helping them to survive, like hunting for food, planting crops. This is probably why we have the sudden appearance of agriculture and civilization as a whole, with older and older traces of ancient civilizations being dug up, like Göbekli Tepe, being dated close to 11,000 BCE, right after the Ice Age. We can no longer look away from the truth that we may have been visited by ancient alien visitors, or even an older, more advanced human civilization. Either way, it's starting to seem that the timeline of our world, it may not be accurate. It's starting to seem that our world may be a part of a huge cargo cult that made gods out of ancient visitors and even claimed they gave us our laws and civilization. So let me know what you guys think about this down below. If you think we're really a product of an advanced civilization, giving us knowledge and rules for how to govern our worlds, I mean, it would make sense, especially if you checked out my video on the cult of Saturn and the families that run our world. Maybe there could be a link to the old humanity or to extraterrestrial visitors. We could be on to something, so please like, comment, and subscribe, everyone. Thanks for joining me today again, guys. I hope you had a good New Year's and a good Christmas too. But be safe, everyone.
Concept. We've taken this one step further, and we're saying it's not just our religion that's a cargo cult. It's not just the pyramids in Egypt or the Nazca lines or something. We're saying our entire civilization is a cargo cult. Our science is a cargo cult.